Welcome to The Bottom Line with Erick Bauer, a podcast that explores the intersection of storytelling, communication, and influence. In each episode, we sit down with leaders, creatives, and communicators who are shaping how stories are told. People who understand how to move an audience, spark a conversation, and leave a lasting impression. Because at the heart of great marketing, powerful leadership, and meaningful change is a story worth telling.
Welcome back to The Bottom Line, where we delve into the stories shaping the future of communications, leadership, and the people behind them. In today's episode, I am honored to be joined by Andrea Chrysanthou, president of CPRS Toronto, award-winning communicator, and founder of the PR agency Amplify. Andrea's journey is nothing short of inspiring. Arriving in Canada as a child refugee, she began her career in journalism, working with some of the country's top broadcasters. Her transition into communications has seen her lead impactful campaigns and advocate passionately for the profession. We discuss the challenges facing the communications industry today, the importance of viewing PR as a vital social science, and the need to support emerging talent in the field. Andrea shares her insights on leadership, resilience, and the power of storytelling in shaping public perception. This conversation is a testament to the transformative power of communication and the individuals who champion it. So, without any further ado, let's dive in. All right, so Andrea, thank you so much for joining us today. Really excited to chat with you. We have worked together over the last several years and been so impressed watching your career over the last 5 or 6 years, the transformation that you've made, going from someone who is working in-house on the corporate side to running their own agency. So there's lots I'd like to get into today. But maybe to begin with, you can just give a little bit of an introduction about yourself and your background in the industry.
Yeah. How much time do you have? No, just joking.
Yeah, as much as you need.
It's, I say my sort of route into the industry is non-traditional, but I think more and more it is becoming the way that a lot of folks are joining public relations. So, I talk about being a refugee and coming to Canada. I was 7 when we arrived, didn't speak a word of English. I wasn't even 7, didn't speak a word of English. Came with a few suitcases, my parents and my brother, and we were able to build a life in Canada, and I'm forever grateful and very proud Canadian, but also very proud immigrant Canadian. And I knew, right from the beginning, I loved music. And so I wanted to be a journalist. And you'll laugh, but the reason I wanted to be a journalist is because I was a big Prince fan and I wanted to meet Prince. and it did happen, but did
it really? Okay, that was going to be my question, but I was like, no, there's no way. But that's fantastic. Yeah,
it did, but I didn't speak to him because I was too nervous to but we were this close, and I was like, I just turned the other way. But really, when I say to you, it's the only reason I wanted to become a journalist is I just wanted to meet this man. And then as I got into journalism school and, I became fascinated with the hard news piece of it, the storytelling aspect. And so I never did go into music journalism. I went into hard news and telling the news both in Canada. And then I moved to Europe for a short period of time and did the news there. Then came back and worked in television, did a bunch of different things, but worked at Much Music, which your students will not understand. But for all our old fogies, it was music station. They played videos long before you could just get your music videos on YouTube. We had to sit and watch and we get really interesting guests that would come to Toronto and we'd interview them. And I worked there for a very, very long time. And Prince came through and got to meet him there. But from there, I started working with a lot of different brands. I was working on several different shows after Much Music, the Marilyn Dennis show, if any of remember that show, and some other sort of lifestyle programming morning shows. And I was spending a lot of time working with PR folks who would send me pitches and say, we would love for our product to be on your show. And I was like, this isn't really interesting. Like what you're pitching me doesn't sound like a good story. And I would help them sort of come up with a narrative that was engaging, that was authentic. And so at one point, as sadly as many of us do, but I worked for Bell Media, and a round of cuts came, and I had been through a gazillion rounds, but finally my time had come. And it was deciding between whether to stay and take on another role at Bell Media or whether I wanted to like sort of break out. And by then I was kind of falling in love with public relations. So I said, you know what? I'm just going to leave. I'm not going to stay where I'm not wanted. And I'm going to go and pursue this public relations gig. And I did. And I'm not saying it's that easy, but since then I've seen many journalists sort of do the same thing, and they call it coming over to the dark side. So I'm over in the dark side now, officially.
Yeah, and I love it. I mean, like it's a very common career transition, right? And when I look at it from your perspective, I mean, looking at your resume, working again as a segment producer on fashion television, working with Much Music, working with YTV, some of the biggest television programs in Canada at the time. For me, I mean, that must have felt like almost a bit of your dream job, right? At the time. What was it like to sort of be put in a position where you were now having to reconsider your career trajectory, where you were going to work? Was there any trepidation there, or did you see it as an opportunity moving to, like you said, the dark side of communications and PR?
It was hard. I mean, for sure. Fashion, first of all, I loved fashion and I loved music. So got the job in fashion first, and that was incredible. But then had this opportunity to do music, which was my biggest love, and left fashion, probably would never have left for fashion for anything other than Much Music. And it was like I was there for 13 years and I worked my butt off. Like we worked 6 days a week, paid five. But it was like we were there all the time. I would work late evenings, but I loved it. I was immersed in the whole idea of it, and felt really grateful. For sure, it was an absolute dream come true. But over time, I mean, I I grew up. So it was hard. It was like doing things in my 30s, which, and even 40s, I was like, this is really kind of cool. But then at some point you're like, I kind of am less vested in the music that's coming out now, in the pop culture that's coming out now. I think I'm ready. And frankly, I think I was also given a bit of a push. Much Music doesn't exist. So could I have stayed? Maybe I could have stayed if something similar existed today, but I don't think it does. And so, you know, I got to live out my dream. I'm so incredibly, incredibly blessed and grateful. But it was time to move on. And so when I did move on, I didn't really hesitate.
Yeah. Yeah, no, and I think, like you said, you were ahead of your time a little bit, maybe, right? The writing was on the wall, and we've seen that continue to happen now over the last decade as the media industry consolidates, and unfortunately, we can continue to see these rounds of layoffs and downsizing. So, I'm curious what your experience, working on the media side, what that taught you when it comes to starting a career in communications in public relations. Like, what were the transferable skill sets that you took, and was it difficult for you to adjust to being on, the other side of the relationship?
Yeah, so I think the biggest thing, and I think, this is true for any journalist who comes across to PR, is it's like knowing how to write. Knowing how to write for an audience is something that you learn in journalism, and it's the same sort of strengths that I have when I write a press release. And it's quite funny because I think when I first started working in PR, I would write my press releases as if they were actual news stories, right? And so journalists could actually envision what that story was going to be. And I was successful, but I, over time have learned to be better at writing press releases. But knowing how to tell a story, for sure, that is number one. Also, here's something that I think was lacking from folks that I was receiving pitches from, but like understanding what's newsworthy. And I think, we struggle with that a lot as PR folks. We have clients or bosses who are like, we're going to be at an event, go write a press release. And you're like, that's not newsworthy. And so for me, I always say I have like this, BS radar where I'm like, that's not a story. I would not write something about that as a journalist. And so I think, number one, that's good for my clients because I can say like, okay, let's work this so that it is a story. But it's also meant that journalists now that I pitch to are more appreciative because they're not getting pitches that are like, Andrea, this is awful. Or when I have to send something out that I'm like, hey guys, I know you're not going to write anything about this, but I wanted you to know that my client is doing X, Y, Z. And they'll appreciate that I haven't wasted their time. So I think those two things are really great. And are easily transferable. I think those were the biggest helps. And you asked me one other question. You said with the challenges, I think.
Yeah, challenges in sort of moving from the media communication side to being on the PR side in general.
Yeah, I think what's frustrating. It's frustrating for me because when I do write a pitch and I know that it's a good pitch or a good story, and a journalist doesn't pick it up, and I'm like, but I know that that's a really good story. So that's frustrating to me because I do believe in what I'm writing. I'm very vested because of that. So I think that's for me been the biggest challenge is sort of stepping back and saying and knowing there's something beyond just saying yes or no to a story. There are other things that I don't know about. I don't know what else is on their schedule that day, what they promised ahead of time to write another story, etc. And so having to let that go has been the most challenging because I'm like, if I was a journalist, I would for sure say yes to this story. And when it gets a no, I feel a little crushed.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. And I mean, like, what I love the credibility that brings to your role as well, right? Having that background in media, being able to have a conversation with, your team, your executive, your senior leadership team, and they at the end of the day know that you were on the other side of that email or on the other side of that pitch. And if you're giving a strategic recommendation, it's because you've been in the trenches and you understand what is newsworthy and what quite frankly isn't.
Yeah, absolutely.
So talk to me a little bit then again now. So now you're working in communications and PR. You've worked on the sort of the corporate side, the client side, and then you sort of start to dabble in the agency world a little bit. Talk to me about that transition and what drove you to sort of make your mark on the agency side of the business.
Yeah, so several years ago, coming out of journalism and television production, I went in-house, which was fine, but I worked for small companies. And so it was me and one other person or me and a couple of people or, just me. And I had talked to a mentor of mine and she said, what's missing is agency is missing out of your sort of career path. And I didn't understand that at the time because don't forget, like I didn't have a PR background, so I didn't know what I didn't know. I was actually quite cocky and the first few days doing PR, I'm not ashamed to say I remember sitting on the edge of my bed crying because I was like, what did I do? I had an easy gig. I was doing TV. I could do it with my eyes closed and they would have moved me around in Bell Media and I would have gotten another job and I would have been fine. But I chose this now and now I'm stuck and there are things I don't know. So those couple of days were not great, but I think, I became quite good at media relations. And so I was like cocky. Yeah, no, I'm good. I get my stories are in the Globe and Mail. But I didn't know what I didn't know. And so going into agency was just, you go from doing one press release a month or one press release every few weeks and having one person and doing one strategy to like 10 strategies in a month and 8 press releases in a month and different types of tactics and different types of objectives and just learning all those pieces. Like my professional growth went from like it went into fast forward pace. And I think I would urge everyone to sort of spend a little bit of time in an agency, not only because you are learning quickly, but you're also immersed amongst other people who are really also really, really great and also have different sets of skills. And so I could walk over to the digital team and understand and see how they do digital and learn from that. The flip side of that is like, I'm not doing digital because there's a digital team, and I'm not
Yeah.
doing crisis because there's a crisis team. Whereas when it's just you, you're doing all of those things, but you can't learn if it's you, right? Like there's no one to learn from. You can kind of, sure, you can take a course, you can sort of try new things, but that learning that comes from being surrounded by really smart people is hard to come by if you're in a communications team of one or two. And so I loved the agency piece for that. The flip side of the agency world though is like it's super hectic. So kudos to those who do it as a lifelong career. But at some point I was like, I can't do 14-hour days every day
Yeah.
forever. I just can't. I'm exhausted. Yeah.
Well, and it's kind of ironic because I would say normally, the path that I wouldn't, well, maybe not normally, but the path that I see that is more common is that people start their careers in agency.
Yeah.
They put in the grind, they do those 14-hour days, they determine what they're good at, what they're not good at, what they like, what they don't like, and then they make the move to sort of a corporate side job or
Right.
an in-house job, so to speak. So you kind of went in the opposite direction, which is interesting. But I would say all of your learnings are so so aligned with what I've experienced, and I
Yeah.
give all of my students the same advice, right? If you're starting your career, if you're looking to cut your teeth and really understand the business, there's no better place to learn than in a busy PR agency.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Absolutely. And
yeah,
now I'm back and now have my own agency. But I'm at in a place now where I can dictate, the types of clients I want to work with, where you don't in an agency. In an agency, you work with whoever your boss tells you you're going to work with, and clients. Very rarely, if you have a good agency, sometimes they'll let you say like, that's not, I don't want to work with this type of client. There's, like, I don't want to work in alcohol, or I don't want to work in whatever. Um, but now I get to choose who I work with, but also I've been really focused, like my goal at Amplify isn't to grow to be a big agency that has like 30 clients and 15 people working for me. It's just me. At some point maybe me and one other person, maybe one other person. But I want
yeah.
3, 4 clients that I love, that I can be truly vested in, that I can focus on. I do think, there were the times when I had 12 clients, and I got to tell you, Eric, like, how
Yeah.
do you even have time to offer your best to 12 clients? It is next
And
to
you can't, right? And I
impossible.
think that's the reality of it for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And so that's, and also like when I get these clients, I give them my word that they're going to get the best service, and it's me. I don't have to vouch for anybody. I can say, yeah, this is what you see, this is what you get, this is what you came for. And I've been, again, like throughout my life, but just touch wood, I've been really, really blessed. And all my clients that have come to Amplify are either former clients who have found me, or people who have been referred to me, or people that have seen my work and said, I want to work with you. So I haven't yet. I will. I'm sure I have to go out and start looking for some work, but for now it's been like such a blessing to have people knock on my door and get to work with some really cool people.
Yeah, well, first of all, that's amazing. Congratulations. I think it's
Thank you.
always so exciting to hear about, friends who are striking out and, doing their own things and becoming
Yeah.
entrepreneurs. You talked a little bit about, some of the pros and some of the things that you're enjoying about running your own agency and your own consultancy. Is there anything that you didn't expect, or anything that has kind of, come out of left field and really made you regret making that decision? I'm just curious.
Yeah. I don't regret. I think my path was being led here, and I think I tell people all the time that like I was thinking about it for a long time, and I put it out into the universe, and like almost immediately the powers that be were like, I was laid off from my in-house job, like almost immediately after I put it out into the universe. And I was like, okay, well, the gods are telling me something. So, and it's quite funny because I've been laid off twice in my life, once from Bell Media and then this last gig. And both those times have been life-changing. The first time I was, it took me a while to like process what was happening. There hasn't really been a day of like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do next? This time around, because I think I felt like this is where I need to be. Are there things yeah, like I hate having to do my website. I hate having to like do all the, I don't have time to do the thought leadership that I would love to do, like write the post, you know, position myself. I always tell students when I meet with them, you are your first client. You are your own first client, right? That's number one. That's the number one rule as a PR person, especially if you have your own agency or if you're looking for the next job. And I don't have the time to do that. And so, it's quite busy. And all the legal stuff, the tax stuff, the business side of things, all that stuff that takes time, you also have to do. I'm really good at strategy. I'm really good at doing the PR work. I'm not so great at like figuring out which tax form to fill out.
Which accounting and
all that sort of stuff.
For sure.
Yeah, and so and sadly, my very first client like reneged on paying me, and so that was like, what do you do? Like it's a bit of a blow. But I don't regret it. I think at least for a while, this is where I need to be. And running a small shop also means that like, if I do lose a client, I'm at a point where I like, ooh, I gotta find someone real quick to take their place. But I'm really grateful for the clients that I have. I really love my clients and I've got some really great ones, and yeah, it's been great.
Yeah, and I mean, I know what I'm excited. Like everybody that I talk to that has gone down this, through this journey, I guess, of entrepreneurship, almost to a T, they say, I wish I would have done this sooner, or I wish I would have started this earlier. They all talk about the challenges. They all talk about, not having enough time, having to, manage all aspects of the business, but the freedom that they experience, I think, overall sense of accomplishment that they get from working on something that is inherently theirs, right? To me, that is such a key part of it, and I'm so glad that you're enjoying it and doing well with it. The other question that I was going to ask that builds on that is, I've always looked at you as being someone who is a very good networker. Like you're out there, you're volunteering with CPRS, president of CPRS, constantly, meeting with people, mentoring people. Do you think that has had a big impact in your ability to, bring clients into the business, to maintain those relationships, and to see your career continue to grow, no matter where you're working?
Yeah, I think for sure. And it's not as sort of like, I'm going to go network because I need a job or anything like that. Although I think there's absolute merit in that, but you're right. You meet people and those people remember you. And it's funny, when I went to journalism school, my very first day, my very first class, my very first teacher, year one, it was a research class, but he said, it's who you know, not what you know. And I don't know that I agree 100% in that notion. I think you have to absolutely know something. But who you know makes a difference. And like I said, I have gotten my clients, almost all, I would say 99% of my clients are people who knew me and either knew me as former clients or had seen me work and said, oh, I saw your work and I got to know you. And I don't want to work with anyone else. I want to work with you. And so that's been, one of my biggest clients now. Hilariously, how it happened, I had a friend who had a friend. So her friend was a PR person and she's like, oh, you two should meet, go for coffee. And I was like, sure, why not? We went for coffee. And she does sort of retail kind of PR, right? And I do more corporate PR. And she reached out to me and said, hey, I have a client, someone who's come to me who wants PR work. It's not the type of PR work that I do. Do you want me to introduce you? And I've gotten two great clients just from that coffee.
Sure.
Which is crazy.
Yeah. And you know what, I think this is when I talk to students and I talk about the key differentiator, like I always give the example, even this week at Meridian, we put out a job posting for a junior comms person. I think we had almost 500 applications for that
Yep.
role, right? So it goes without saying that your ability to vet those applications, vet those candidates, it's very challenged. And what you're ideally looking for at the end of the day is an existing relationship, someone you know,
Yeah.
someone who is being referred to you, right? There's got to be that connection that you have with an individual. And best way for you to do that as a young person is to network, get out
Yep.
there, have conversations, right? But to do it in a way that is not overtly focused on, securing a job, but actually
Yeah.
just building a relationship.
100%. I urge that all the time, and I almost never say no to like a call, like, and and I have these half-hour calls with a lot of new PR folks or students. And I've had like, even I would say even volunteer, like volunteer with CPRS, volunteer with IABC. I have this one young woman who volunteered at a couple of events when I was at the Public Affairs Association of Canada. And to this day, um, I have to tell you, I don't even know how great her PR is, but I recommend her for things all the time because she volunteered. She was the first there. She had a smile on her face. She didn't say no. In fact, she was like, beyond this, can we do this, this, and this? Like she showed initiative, all the
Yeah.
things that you and I know can't be taught, right? Like I can teach you to write a press release. I can't teach you to have the curiosity to think about how will this press release matter? What else should I be looking for? How can I make this better than the other 5 press releases that the journalist is going to receive today? So to me, getting yourself known, shaking someone's hand or having a virtual call, but more importantly, putting yourself in a position where you are showing these folks in positions of authority that you are worthy of their time, like, hey, notice me. A few years back, I also was teaching a class, and sadly it was during COVID, so a lot of it was virtual, but I would bring in virtually folks from the industry. And I remember this one time I brought in a friend who was head of a practice group at National Public Relations, which where I was working, one of the biggest PR firms. So they hire people all the time. And not one student was on camera. Not one student asked questions. And then he left and I kind of lost it a little bit on the class. And I was like, how many of you are here for like, how many of you are hoping for a job when this is over? Are we just
Yeah.
wasting mom and dad's money? Like, I just don't know why we're here. And I said, you could have, been on this man's radar when he's hiring in a month from
Yeah.
now. He would have remembered you. You would have said, I was the one who asked the question. And he would have, yes, that was a smart question. And instead, none of like, I gave you a golden ticket and you all threw it away. And so
Yeah.
that like, and I'm sure that's the same for your classes. You bring in guests as you bring in folks when they go to CPRS events. I love when you've been to the events. We will have lineups of people just waiting to talk to us and like shake hands and ask our advice or whatever. And I go with that in mind. And it's exhausting, but it's also like, I love that. That's why I'm there to pay that forward. And it's an opportunity. And I really, really encourage students or young people, or even, even at the phase that we're in our life, like our next job, someone's going to have to hire us. And you're right. If we have a great recommendation or if someone says good things about us or the opposite, that'll be a deciding factor for sure.
Yeah, and it's so funny because I think about myself. Even yesterday, I was having a coffee chat with someone who had reached out and wanted to kind of pick my brain a little bit. And yeah, the sentiment that I shared was that even now, 15, 16, however long it's been, years into my career, I'm still forcing myself to get out there and to
Yeah.
network and to connect with people, even though it's uncomfortable, it's anxiety provoking, it's not always the easiest thing to do because you're busy, but you never know when you're going to need your network. And if you wait
Yes.
until you need your network to kind of curate it and to make sure that it's mature, it's too late, right? You've
It's
got
too
to make
late.
sure that you're constantly paying attention, building those relationships so that when you do need it, and for whatever reason, your job, there's layoffs, downsizing, you decide you
Yeah.
want to move on, that's when your network becomes so valuable.
100%.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, Talk to me a little bit about CPRS. So obviously, as the president of CPRS, it's an organization that you've been involved with for a long time. I've worked with you at CPRS and seen some of the great work that you and your teams have done. For young people, or even sort of mid-career folks that have not yet gotten into the sort of the world of professional associations, what's your sort of advice when it comes to joining either an IABC or a CPRS?
Yeah. So first, I'm going to say CPRS Toronto. I'm not the president of CPRS National, but CPRS Toronto. Although we are the biggest chapter. But I think one of the things that I implemented when I first was membership chair several years ago was just asking folks why they join, right? So understanding, why are people paying their money? Because they're certainly not, they don't have extra cash lying around, and they're like, I think I'm just going to throw money at this organization. And overwhelmingly, people tell us that they're joining because they want to network, and they want to network specifically to get their next job, right? And
Right.
also, sure, professional development, I think too, is a little bit less of a it's a little bit less of a driver, but we do offer that. And so I would say to people, number one, it is great for that. But I always, when I go to classrooms and I talk about a CPRS membership, I always liken it to a gym membership. You can buy a gym membership, but if you put it in your pocket and never go to the gym, you're not going to get stronger or lose the weight or gain the muscle or whatever it is your goals are, right? You're just going to be exactly the same, and you will have wasted a whole bunch of money month after month. So I urge people to say, okay, I'm going to make a commitment. I'm going to join this organization, and then I'm going to use my membership. I'm going to go to the events, and I'm going to shake hands with people. And then I'm going to follow those people on LinkedIn and reach out to them. And like you said, sort of nurture those relationships over time. The person that you meet at CPRS tomorrow at an event is likely not going to hire you next week, although it's been known to happen. Um, but over time, you're going to build that relationship. And like I said, with this young woman who I met years ago at Public Affairs Association of Canada, over time, just, she was consistent. And that is like, that's reassuring, right? Like when you hire someone, you're like, I just need someone to be consistent. I need to know that they're going to show up when they say they're going to show up. Need to know that if I need to call them at 7 p.m. with an emergency, that they're going to pick up the phone. And her consistency just meant so much to me. And so I urge folks to do that. And I think CPRS does offer those opportunities. There's really, really incredible folks who are members, but also on the board at all levels. And the board members are quite open to being at events, taking calls, taking meetings. Thank goodness for virtual meetings, right? Because I don't know that I would be able to do like coffee meetings all the time. But, if I'm happy to spend half an hour chatting with someone over Zoom or over Teams, and get to know them, and get to know them over time. And I always say, like, keep me in the loop, let me know what's happening. So I think that's really a reason to join. Of course, I do think there's also that the professional development and kind of interesting pieces that we bring together, especially for those who are no longer in school. And I would say certainly for like the mid-level folks who haven't done school for a while, or in my case, I hadn't done PR school.
Yeah.
Um, and so I took the APR exam, which was not fun, but I really learned so much. It really, really did make a difference in my career. And it actually, I got to be honest with you, the one client that I've had in my year and a half at Amplify that didn't come from knowing me was a gentleman from San Francisco. And he told me he needed a Canadian PR person. And he just went on LinkedIn and looked for someone with an APR
Oh,
and,
wow.
and reached out to me. And he's like, I don't know who you are, but the fact that you have APR means to me that you're smart enough to like get this done.
Yeah,
And
that's
that was it.
fantastic. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well,
So
and it does go to show, right? Like that's another example, and a small example of being proactive, of going the extra mile, of really
yeah.
investing in yourself and doing something that is maybe going to be a little bit of short-term pain, but in the long
Yeah.
term is going to pay dividends and come back to reflect on your reputation.
Yeah. And again, we're talking about the things that I talk about with students all the time, but like, come May, I guess now, there'll be, 1,000, 2,000. I think actually I have it written down somewhere, but like 8,000 students that are going to graduate, right?
Yeah,
This
yeah.
year across the country. There aren't going to be 8,000 jobs. I can tell you that. So how are you going to differentiate, even out of your classroom of 30, how are you going to differentiate from the other 29 students in your classroom? What is your resume going to look like that's different? And when you look at these 500 resumes that you've got, like, how does one stand out if all other things being equal, you don't know any of them, you're going to go, oh, they've got this extra accreditation. Oh, they're a volunteer here. Or, oh, they have a blog where they talk, and that's the other thing. Like, I always say to people, the first thing you're going to do once you narrow it down is you're going to go and creep these people on LinkedIn and see who they are, right?
Sure. Yeah.
What does your LinkedIn look like? Like, right? Like, is it smart? Is it clever? Is it, are you writing blog posts about your love of PR and the things that you're learning? And like, do you have an opinion? Years ago, I tell this story all the time. There was this young woman, she was still in school, and it was at the time when George Floyd was murdered and Black Lives Matter sort of took off. It was really a challenging time for all of us. And she wrote an article or a blog post on a website, and someone shared it with me. And it was a blog post around why PR needs to have more diversity and really like pay attention to Black Lives Matter. And it was a great opinion. It was really written well, and it showed initiative of someone who was passionate about something. At the time, I was also hiring a coordinator, and we had 1,000 resumes,
Wow.
and just sitting in a stack. And I was like, stop the presses, find me this young woman. And I got her on the phone and I said, I really want to hire you. I had not even seen her resume, and she was still in school. And I was like, listen, I loved what you did, and I want to work with you. And she was still in school, and she said, I still have another semester to go. And I was like, "Oh, I really need someone full time. Let me figure out how I can make this happen, because I just have to figure it out. Let's stay in touch." And she messaged me a few days later, and she was like, I just got a job at Edelman. They're going to take it as is. Like, they're going to wait for me to finish, and they're paying me part-time until then. Like, she was
Yeah.
getting multiple offers from agencies she wasn't even finished school, but she was
Yeah.
differentiating. So I know I've sort of moved away from CPRS, but I think the idea of using these platforms, CPRS, IABC, she had written this blog post on a student PR website. Like, these tools exist. LinkedIn is free. Some of these tools are quite inexpensive to get your name out there. And I think you have to do it.
Yeah. No, and I think you'd said earlier in the conversation, right? You are your own first client, and you need to treat
Exactly.
yourself that way, right? So show that you know how to build a brand, show that you know how to start a blog, start a podcast, to network, to, amplify your platform digitally, build a website.
Exactly.
There are free or close to free ways to do all of those things. And I think the successful students and the successful, young practitioners are the ones that go out there, they put in the extra effort, and they demonstrate that. And when
Yeah,
you do that, people notice, right?
absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I appreciate all the insight. I think it's so good for you to share all of the knowledge that you've built over the course of your career. And I want to be very, very mindful of your time. The one question I wanted to ask is, you talked about being 5 or 6 years old, coming to Canada as a refugee, not speaking the language, not having a network, obviously, no connections in the industry. What would you right now, where you are in your career, having achieved so much, what would you tell that young girl, if you could give her a few pieces of advice, or just a few words of encouragement now that you've kind of lived your professional life and achieved so much? Is there anything that you would kind of, like to share with her?
Make me all like want to cry remembering that little girl. I would say do more. I was so engaged politically, like being a refugee, I was very aware of what was happening in the world around me, but I didn't have I didn't have the wherewithal to know like what to do with that. I think our kids now, Eric, are so blessed that they have like us as parents to be able to go, you know what you should do is like go and speak at this event, or go and, volunteer over here, or write something for a blog or whatever. My 11-year-old, I tell him that all the time. He's like, yeah, I don't care. But I did care. I was quite engaged. So you need that to begin with. But once you're engaged, there are so many opportunities that are low hanging fruit and quite much easier than you think to go out there and build a name for yourself. And, I see young people doing it all the time, making a difference. And I think I would say to people now too, like whatever stage you are, if you're a student, if you're a university student, if you're, just finishing college or finishing your courses, like go and volunteer with an organization. I have an older daughter who, she went to Queen's, and after that she joined the Queen's Alumni Association and became their marketing person. Like she's in marketing, and but she would have never thought to do something like that, and she saw what I was kind of doing and was like, hey, maybe I should do that as well, and added that to her resume, and learned also from that, and got to be around a lot of interesting people. And I also think what I would say to her is like, just keep learning. Like there's so much to learn in the world, and I have this great thirst for learning something new, and learning more about the world around me, and so I would just say to her, like, don't limit yourself.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. I think it's great advice, and it's a great takeaway, especially now, right? With everything that's happening in the world with AI, and the way that all industries are being disrupted and transformed. You really need to demonstrate curiosity. You need to be, inquisitive, go out there, learn new things almost on a daily basis. And if you do that, I still feel like opportunities will come your way, right? But the
100%.
onus is on you. Nobody else is going to do it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Andrea, thank you so much for your time. I really, really appreciate it. Is there anything else that you wanted to touch on, or any kind of parting words that you want to leave our listeners with?
Well, I will just say, listen, I know that PR is going through a really, really challenging time right now. We're seeing schools, programs shuttering, and programs shutting down. And I just urge our students to continue to fight for our profession. I urge agencies and hiring professionals to look at public relations as a social science. And I urge your students to really like acknowledge and celebrate the fact that our profession is a social science. It's not like a nice to have, like we write stories. We actually really create campaigns that use behavioral psychology, and it's a smart career. And I urge all of us just to like really be proud of it, take pride in what we do. And as we do that, I think more people outside of our profession will start looking at us as an industry that, that should be applauded, and should be admired. So I just urge all of us to like really be proud of the fact that we're doing really great work.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think I love that sentiment. It's obviously a challenging time for the industry, and it's been really, really, sad to see what's happened with the post-secondary landscape across Ontario and Canada as well. But I do feel like there will be a bit of a reckoning. I feel like there will be a new kind of process that gets put into place for recruiting young talent, because at the end of the day, our industry is really about storytelling. It's about, being able to communicate effectively. And there's always going to be a need for that, no matter what tool, no matter what, algorithm is invented. I still think that we will need those skills and experiences. So I feel like we'll be in a healthy, robust industry for a long time to come, although there may be some turbulence along the way. Yeah.
Hear that.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you, Andrea. I really appreciate your time. And thank you for all that you do with CPRS. And thanks for taking the time to chat.
My pleasure. Thank you so much, Eric.
Thanks for listening to The Bottom Line with Erick Bauer. If you enjoyed the conversation, share it with someone who'd appreciate it. And don't forget to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. New episodes are on the way, and you won't want to miss what's next.